Hi. For those of you that were here this morning, this will be a bit of a repeat, but if I could replay what we talked about in the earlier sessions. Pam and her colleague from Ping laid out a kind of fundamentals of OpenID Connect. And the idea, as some of you heard earlier from Alex Simons from Microsoft, was that OpenID Connect has really gone mainstream. And so what we've been doing today in this track and this afternoon with you is to start at that notion of OpenID Connect is not if, but when its deployment will occur in programs like the ones that you lead. After that, Mike Jones talked about the value of OpenID Connect certification. And this was a particularly important piece that the OpenID Foundation has innovated, which is this notion of self-certification. How can we trust different actors in the ecosystem? How can identity providers and relying parties trust each other? So this notion of self-certification of a deployment of OpenID Connect became very important to the foundation 2 years ago. And we've essentially rolled it out to what we think is fairly substantial success. We have almost 100 implementations of OpenID Connect that have been self-certified. For many of you, that notion of self-certification may be a bit new or awkward, but it's fundamentally the notion of how do we have a low-cost, easy-to-use, highly scalable way of promoting trust. As Andre said in his keynote, it's all about trust within this ecosystem. So we think that when companies and organizations and groups like the ones that you lead move to OpenID Connect, they can use the self-certification as a way of providing a basis of trust for different actors in the ecosystems and partnerships that you play in. And that self-certification, again, was the sum of three parts, or two parts, excuse me, the reporting of results of a test that's available for anyone at any time at no cost to use. You can find out more information on the OpenID Foundation website. And pairing that or linking that technical description, technical reporting of results of a certification test with a legal statement that essentially provides a company's assurance by putting their brand on the line that these results of this particular deployment of OpenID Connect are in fact representative of a company's best efforts. So in sum, we think that certification plays an important part of the evolution of OpenID Connect. Lastly, we talked about one of the profiles of OpenID Connect for the mobile community. And John Bradley gave you that fine-grained and often controversial separation between the work of one of our member organizations, the GSMA, and the work of the Moderna Working Group, which again is a profile of OpenID Connect in the platform of choice. In that discussion, John mentioned that Account Chooser is being developed so that it can also fit into the customer journey, and Pam will be talking about that in detail in the next presentation. Following Pam's presentation, we had the opportunity of launching a new work group called the Financial API Work Group, or the FAPI Work Group. And we think that this is a natural evolution of the foundation moving from, we think, the standard of open standard of choice, OpenID Connect, on the platform of choice, the mobile platform, and the Account Chooser provides more tools for you to use, and then ultimately we'll talk about the role of OpenID Connect and OpenID Foundation in the fintech industry. So that's a bit of where we've been and where we're going. I'll turn the stage and presentation over to Pam Dingle of Ping to take you through Account Chooser and its working group at the OpenID Foundation.
Perfect. Here's your water. Get that?
And here's my prize for getting off the stage.
That's right. No, just kidding. Yes, hi everybody. I'm Pam Dingle. I work for Ping Identity, and I'm one of the members of the Account Chooser working group at the OpenID Foundation. So we have a working group there that's working on specifications We're looking at user experience, a bunch of stuff I'm going to go through. But as you're looking at all of this stuff, if you think it's a disaster and it needs help, or you think it's amazing and you want to be part of it, or anything in between, please come join us in the working group where we meet every 2 weeks. It's a low commitment, but it's I think a pretty transformational piece of technology. All right, so we need to start by talking about what exactly Account Chooser is, because it doesn't follow the typical specification type of things. So we actually have three definitions of Account Chooser in our working group. It is a set of specifications, and we work on those specifications. There's a basic specification and an advanced specification. However, there's also an interface, like an actual user interface that we work on and try to improve. And that interface is actually implemented in a reference implementation on a website at the domain accountchooser.com. So y'all can go to accountchooser.com if you want to and take a look. You can also go to accountchooser.net, which has a whole bunch of information for developers and all that other stuff. So if you get bored with me, you can just skip ahead. Get on the internet. That'll be fine, probably. All right, so Account Chooser is literally a thing that we are operating out of the OpenID Foundation. It runs static JavaScript code, meaning that there is no hidden code that you can't see. You can actually open up your browser and inspect every piece of code that runs at accountchooser.com. And I'm going to explain next what it is that accountchooser.com does other than implement our specification. So first of all, what is the business problem? Why are we even here? Well, this is a form that you're probably all familiar with seeing, especially as identity people. We call this, among other things, a NASCAR login, where you've got some pretty pictures up top to try to help people remember an identity provider that they may have logged in with. And then we have a username or email and password below for folks who have what we call primary accounts, an account that has a credential directly associated on the website. So the website owner has constructed this form as a very geeky way of explaining the relationships that he supports on his website, right? He supports federation through Facebook, federation through Google, federation through Twitter, or a direct authentication. So that's great. I mean, how easy is this to use, right? Well, it's not that easy, because when you start operating these websites at scale, and I'm sure you've all experienced this also, do you remember which provider you might have logged in, especially in a consumer website? Maybe you don't. Do you remember which email you used to log in? Do you remember which password? So there are really 3 pieces of discovery information that this website owner needs to know in order to move forward. And this interface gets the job done, but really only barely. And not only does it only barely get the job done, but the next time the user comes to the site, the user has to remember all this information all over again, as if this user was a complete stranger to the website, when in fact this user probably logged in the day before. So the question is, what can we do that's better than this strange, geeky thing every single time? So a member of our working group and also a pioneer in this whole area, among others, is Google. So Google has, if you're all familiar with the identifier first flow with Google, you'll find that if you go to a Google property these days, you will not see a NASCAR, right? Now Google supports federation. They support primary accounts with direct credentials. They have a lot of different ways to log in. They support enterprise accounts, right, where you've got an actual corporate domain. They don't ask you for any of that up front anymore. They ask you for one single box for you to type your email. And when you get in there and you click next, then they decide what should happen next. And this makes a great ton of sense, because there are really 3 possible flows that you could be taken through after you enter your email address. And by looking up your email address, Google can decide which one to execute. So it can decide, if it's never seen your email before, that you might want to register that as a new user. It can also decide that you have a local account at google.com, and they can take you there to enter your password. Or it can also look up the fact and say you're a federated user, and it can figure out your identity provider and send you off, make a SAML request, for example, to your corporate identity provider. So this one piece of information can enable 3 different flows without forcing the user to remember all of the information up front. So the thing that augments this, that goes along with this discovery of starting with your email address, is remembering what the choices were that either you specified or that the system discovered on your behalf. So what you see here is an account chooser, right? There are account choosers all over the place. There are account choosers, if you log into Netflix, you're gonna see an account chooser. If you log into, any number of consumer websites, you're going to see this idea of PlayStation is another perfect example, right? You log in, you see collections of just small, lightweight information that are going to help direct you to the right account under the right circumstances. That's what this is. So you can see you've got 2 different accounts associated to 2 different email addresses. In this case, neither of them are affiliated with a provider, an identity provider, but they could be. So the idea is, after you've gone through your bootstrap of discovery, then you push a small piece of information into something like local browser storage, not that different from a remember me cookie, right, except less annoying, so that the next time the user comes back, not only is their experience better in the bootstrap, it's better in a continuing, ongoing case, right? They see things that actually matter to them, that mean something to them. So let's talk about what pieces of information are in an account chooser. As of today, there are 4 pieces of information by default in an account chooser. There is a display name, which is meant to obviously signify a user and be something they're comfortable with. An email address, which represents their what we would call claimed identifier, so the thing that they think will uniquely identify them at the site. Their photo URL, which of course is for usability's sake, for them to understand and be able to easily tell the difference between their different accounts. And optionally, a provider ID at the bottom. So if this account, the account represented, is actually an account that's affiliated to an identity provider, then you see the fav icon of the domain representing that IDP also on the screen. And I'm showing you this all in pieces, right? So it's probably hard to figure out how all the pieces go together. We're going to run an end-to-end demo fairly shortly so you can see how this all actually works in real life. So I'm going to give you all the bits and pieces first. All right, so the interface you just saw runs on accountchooser.com. And accountchooser.com, as I said, it serves static JavaScript, so it's always examinable by people who use it. It stores information about identities, the 4 pieces of information you saw in browser local storage. Okay, so nothing gets sent to the cloud. Nobody's aggregating data on your movements. Nobody can tell what websites you might have visited if you decide to use Account Chooser. It's literally just a standalone piece of code that you exit locally in your client context to help you remember your accounts. Now, it comes with an API. So the way that these records get stored in your account, in your user storage, and then read from your user storage is using a JavaScript API. So your identity provider or the website can choose to push an account record into the chooser. If they choose to do that, what happens is an interface will open, and the user will be asked for consent to have that data pushed into their account chooser. If the user says yes, then the record gets stored, and you get to use it, forevermore until it goes away and has to be recreated. If it's actually a website that wants to consume information from the account chooser in order to perform a bootstrap or start a federated connection, the way that they do that is also consent-driven. So they actually make an API call using our JavaScript API, and accountchooser.com executes the GUI to ask the user to choose a record. Okay, so it's very important to note that the website that's asking to consume this information only ever gets information if a user actively chooses a record. They don't get to see all the accounts in the account chooser. They only get to see the one that the user selected. So you can kind of see where this is going, right? We have the standalone website that really just operates on local context. We have an API that allows people to push things in and pull things out. That's kind of it, right? The whole goal of this is to keep it as simple as possible. So we have two specifications of how this happens, right? And really the thing that we're specifying is that request for account chooser information and also the ability to store the information into the account chooser. We've also, in the specification, got things like how to brand the account chooser. So we want to put enough information into the account chooser that people don't think it's a phishing attack, for example, but not so much that we're pushing fancy, complex data that might become a security risk. So we've balanced that by saying you can write some HTML that accountchooser.com will display, but it's sanitized like you would not believe, right? So there's no special characters, you're not going to be running code, none of that kind of stuff. So that's the simple specification, and I would suggest you guys go read it, mostly because I'm in the middle of writing drafts for it, and I'd really love your feedback. So if you have a chance to go to openid.net/wg/ac, the link will be in here at the end. I'd really appreciate it. All right, so let's get more concrete now. Talk about what is this thing we're actually going to call to launch an account chooser. So this is an example of what a website owner would have to put in their website or into their login page, right, of their website. It doesn't have to be on every page. So what you can see is the first thing we've done is included the ac.js script at the beginning of the file. And then we've added a script element that configures a variable called accountchooser.config. So that's all a website user has to do in order to ask the account chooser to select, to ask the user to select an account. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. So you can see we tell it whether we want login mode or sign-in mode, and we tell it what parts of the login form actually hold the username and the password. The reason we tell it that is the account chooser is smart enough, once the user chooses that account record, to map the data from it back into a login form. So what it means is you don't need federation for account chooser to work. You can select an account and have the username from the account record you selected just show up in your login form. So the user never has to type it. All they have to do is click. Let's see, anything else? And then so you can see down here we actually have the actual login form, and you can see that the input IDs of that form match what we've specified inside of account chooser. So this is the simplest way that you could invoke account chooser on your website. We also have an advanced spec. So that very simple variable that you saw really invokes APIs that do fairly complex things. And those APIs are, we've basically tried to abstract away that messiness, if you will, but some people want it, right? Some people want to dig in and do very complex things. So the advanced API spec is attempting to document those APIs so that if you want to go crazy with it, you actually can. And is Brian in here? So Brian Berliner is at the conference here somewhere, and he's the guy who wrote the last draft for that spec. So keep an eye out for him if you want to learn more. All right, how are we doing for time? Okay, so I have like 5 minutes, right? Okay, so so we can either go through the business advantages or we can do a demo. Yes, I was so hoping you'd say that. It's way more fun. Whoa, all right, hopefully you guys can see it. All right, so I actually have the demo working both in the federated sense and in the, my screen just went black. Oh, there we go. Whew, that's small. Hold on. You guys can't see that. I know, the demo gods have been terrible to me lately. I don't know what it is. It's like they hate me. I must have angered them somehow. Are we still able to do the? There we go. All right, good. Give me time to make this bigger anyway. All right, so this is a website you guys can actually try on your own if you want to, and this is in Chrome. Essentially, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to log in. So this is just a pretend consumer site. I'm going to log in. Oh, of course, this part isn't, I don't know if that gets, oh, it does get bigger. Look at that. The internet's so cool. All right, so what you just saw is you saw the login page start to run, and then it invoked the ac.js JavaScript. Now, what it actually does is checks to see if you have anything in your account chooser. If you don't have anything in your account chooser, there's no point in redirecting to force a user to choose something that doesn't exist. So when the account chooser is empty, it just falls through and the user logs in using their regular form. In my case, I have 2 users here in my account, and I'm actually going to add a third right now so you can see it. So I'm actually going to fall through. I'm going to log in as very sample with a very secure password. Yes. Oh, it doesn't like me. All right, we're skipping that part of the demo. No, that's fine. I can actually log in. So I can actually register instead of logging in and have it come up. Oh, come on, demo gods. All right, so in this case, I'm going to choose one of my existing users because apparently I've forgotten Mary's password. Oh, no, come on. All right, fine. I broke my demo. It'll work in about 5 seconds as soon as I'm off this stage. But that's okay, because I have 2. How's that for a backup? All right, so what you would have seen in that last demo was very simple. It just simply would have been me clicking on a user's name and their username being populated into the login form for them to then type their password. This is the cooler demo. So this is a federated demo. What you're going to see here is I'm going to type my email address into this login form, and that is this site is going to act as a federated relying party. It's going to make a request, an OpenID Connect request to an identity provider remotely. The user's going to log in there, but when they log in, what you'll see is they don't have to type their username twice. So they're actually going to type their username here at the relying party. They're going to type their password at the identity provider, and then they're going to get a federated token that comes back, and they're going to be logged in. Okay, that's the first Bootstrap experience. Everything's so small. All right, so what you can see here is Alice. If you look very closely, you see alice@yahoo.com is grayed out here. It's already been set. It's been set as part of the OpenID Connect request. Okay, I'm going to sign on here. Right. Hooray for multi-factor authentication. There we go. All right, so she went through a 2-factor authentication there. She's now being asked for approval. This is an optional part of the OpenID Connect spec. Depends on who it is that's granting approval. But I wanted to show it here because the OpenID Connect scope request included these scopes. So all of these checkboxes are the scopes involved. The client is what's listed on the right, which is Hips to Bank. And now this user is logged in. Now that this user is logged in, what we're going to do, we're going to change. Let's see. Will it break if I do this? It probably will. Let's change our time zone. That should trigger it. So essentially what I've done is I've configured this so that anytime anything happens to the account record, we push a new account chooser record. So what you can see now is the account chooser's popped up and said, hey, Alice, we'd sure like to add you to the account chooser. Is that okay? So if she agrees, then she can click Add Account. If she disagrees, she can say Continue without adding. However, now that this is added, we'll log her out. And now, so what you saw before was a pretty good flow, right? She typed her username at the RP. She typed her password at the IDP. She was logged in. So this time, here's what it's going to look like, assuming it works. All right, so she's now in the account chooser. You can see her there. Yes. Okay, that's not good. Damn. Okay, well, this is her being asked to enroll in multi-factor authentication. So apparently she wasn't actually enrolled. So I can actually, hold on. Sorry, I really wasn't trying to give this particular demo. However, I can do it really fast, so that's fine. Okay, there, she enrolled for MFA as an extra bonus. She's logged in. She's going to get her consent, and now she's going to log back in. So that wasn't actually that short. ironically. Although I have to say, as an enrollment flow, it wasn't that bad, right? So, all right, well, I'm going to have to get off the stage here, but let me try one more time. Just going to log in. Just going to select her account chooser record. An OpenID Connect request is sent, and an OpenID Connect response comes back, and she's logged in. So in this case, she had a session at her IDP. She literally didn't type anything. All she did was click her account chooser record, and she was in. So it doesn't get much better than that. So I will leave you with that now that the demo gods have managed to be happy with me, and hopefully that was useful. Have I used up all my question time?
Let's see if there's any questions in the audience.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Stephen.
To a number of apps or web apps to see if they'd be interested in it. And the redirects are really actually kind of a conversation killer. Like we even saw it there. Like it's kind of janky to go to account chooser, get redirected back to the site, then get redirected to the IDP. So if we could make it part of the browser where we just stuff this information in there and be able to call an API there, was there some history behind account choosers to why we went that route?
Yeah, some of it, I agree. So there's a few redirect pieces in the spec that are historical, that were sort of there before the current group took possession of it. I'd like to see some of that go away. Certainly the federation piece of it kind of has to be redirect based. But no, I agree with you. I mean, if we could make it simpler and more embedded and involve less bouncing around, I think everybody would be happier. The one thing is, though, you need to redirect to accountchooser.com because the security model of accountchooser.com is that it's essentially a common domain cookie, right? So we are storing things in browser local storage for that particular domain. And that's what allows us to use the API to transfer between domains. Now, that's not to say that we couldn't choose a better method to make it work, but it does need to be the actual accountchooser.com domain that stores the information. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think the big alternative that the pushback I hear is if you just show an email field, there's already browser autocomplete. So if all you're doing is to fill that field in,
Yep.
what advantage do you get by doing this redirect? Like, couldn't you just expand the browser functionality to make that work?
You could. I think the nice model of what we have is the privacy piece. So, I mean, you could install a browser extension, for example. I mean, there's form-filled browser extensions that would do the same thing. But this model is sort of meant to span more models. But we should talk about it. If we can find a better way to do it, I'm all up for doing it. Because I think the thing for me is the experience, right? More so than the underlying technology, as long as it's secure. I think the working group would definitely look at it. So.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.